Welcome, everybody. My name's Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Hello, everybody. We're back with The Trend, talking about true crime, recent incident that happened. And we're going to be talking about the shooting death of the executive CEO of United Healthcare in New York. The individual who has been arrested, charged, and allegedly committed this offense is Luigi Mangione. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about the case today, about the several factors in the investigation. The most important thing, and I guess most interesting thing to me, is the people who have supported Luigi Mangione after this incident. The supporters out there are in his corner. They're posting things on social media in every way supporting him. And I think the lost person this is the victim. So we're going to be talking about today. Today we have our two producers of Trend Media. We have executive producer Sarah Streifler, and then we also have a producer Allie Vogt. And again, they both are producers of the Trend podcast. Since this is a case where we really don't have a law enforcement representative, we wanted to make sure that we actually had a couple of people here that can ask questions and show the research that they've done in this case. Who of you want to kick this off here? Who wants to start it up?
So the suspect that's been charged, Luigi Mangione, he was an Ivy League graduate and the valedictorian of his class at his high school in Baltimore. Really interesting facts.
Yeah.
And his family owns a real estate business and country clubs. He comes from a really wealthy background. And despite this, he was often described as humble and destined for a bright future by his friends and family. And Luigi went missing in November, and his mom reported this to the police. So on December 4th at 6:44 a.m., the masked gunman, which is assumed to have been Luigi, he stood against a wall across from the street at New York Hilton Midtown and shot Brian Thompson multiple times while he was walking towards him. Witnesses reported hearing multiple gunshots before seeing Mangione flee the scene. And in surveillance, you can see the gun malfunction, and he clears the jam and then continues to fire, and he later fled the scene.
You know, it's interesting because Luigi Mangione originally was not known at the time, and at the time they thought it was a professional hit. In other words, somebody who had done this before as a hitman, and that was the word out there. A couple of things I'm going to talk about as we progress through the podcast today is some of the misinformation or some of the wrong information that was presented out there. So, Sarah, anything you want to add right off the bat here?
Not too much to add, but I do have a question. You know, that initial statement put out about being a hitman. Do you think that comes from the gun knowledge that it looked like the suspect had in the video?
I think it comes from a couple of things. First, it was basically an ambush, and the shooter knew exactly who was going to come out, when they were come out, and why they came out, because they're going to be going to a conference. Second of all is hiding their face. They hid their face. They're in a position to be able to fire the shots without anybody seeing the face of the shooter, actually the victim. And there's a lot of speculation. I saw it on the mainstream media, social media, and other avenues where people are just guessing. That's what they're throwing out. I heard some people say it was a professional hit. Other people say, no, it was an amateur's job. So all sorts of different things that were part of this and came into play.
Yeah.
So another question that I think we can bring up is, so his family and his friends and people who knew him had really nothing but good things to say. It was hard for them to believe that he had committed a crime like this. Do family and friends typically describe a suspect well? I mean, do they typically have good things to say, or is that out of the ordinary for them to really praise his personality?
How many times have you heard, well, I've lived next door to this person for 5 years. I never thought they could do this, right? Or that's not the person I knew. Yeah, there's a lot of people that can fool people. But again, Luigi disappeared for quite a while. I believe he was in Hawaii at the time. A lot of time spent out there and made some friendships. The friendships he made, again, I saw a couple of interviews, some friend of his who said never thought he would have been capable of this. But who knows deep-seated what goes on. I think there's still a motive out there, but why he did that, that's still unknown. Because from what I understand, he or his family were not insured by United Healthcare. Yeah. And second of all, why that person? You know, there's other executives with United Healthcare too, so why specifically that person?
Back to the firearm knowledge. At this point, he's not been charged. He's not been found guilty of it.
Correct.
He's been charged. So if it was Luigi that did this, how do you think he got the knowledge of the firearm that he did?
Firearms are easier to get than people realize, first of all. And I don't think I've heard anything about tracing the firearms. Let me tell you about the firearm, though. I've watched a lot of accounts of this since it's pretty recent, and it was kind of interesting to me because through Vista Law Enforcement Training, we do executive protection. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. Talk about that in a little bit. One person said, I've seen that gun before. It's a veterinary gun that is used to tranquilize animals. Did you guys see that on TV where they said that? One guy was for sure was a veterinary tranquilizing gun, and he's familiar with them. He's seen them before. Well, it turned out not to be the case. And do you guys remember the source of the gun? If not, it was a ghost gun that was produced on a 3D printer.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting that's been possible. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it was done. It's been done quite a bit, actually. That was the start of the 3D printing aspect for guns years ago. And to have that happen and have the gun produced like that is very interesting. It's just funny how the misinformation out there, 100% of the veterinary gun turned out to be as a manufactured gun on a 3D printer. It's easy to learn about guns. You can look up on the internet, look up different sites about the operations, ammunition, and all sorts of other aspects. The gun jammed, as we both saw, right? We all saw.
Yeah.
And did it jam because of the manufacturing process, or did it jam because he didn't know how to shoot it? So that's a couple of things there.
Right. He also had the silencer on it.
Yeah.
Pretty sure too.
Silencers were illegal for many, many years, but now you can get silencers with certain permissions from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. There are actually suppressors. You have to get certain tax stamps and authorization and background to be able to get that. But so there are silencers out there, or suppressors. That's why people thought it was a professional hit job, because of the way the person set up.
Do you think he had those things set up and the approval through ATF, or?
No, I don't. I have not heard he had. Okay. So he's been charged, I think, with a firearms violation too. So.
For sure.
Yeah.
So maybe black market stuff.
Yep.
Interesting. Another thing I want to bring up is his state of mind. So there's a lot of social media posts before where he expressed concern about corporate greed, specifically in the healthcare industry. And I think this shows a long time coming that he was really frustrated with the healthcare industry. He also had suffered a surfing accident that caused a back injury, which led him to be living in pain for a long time. And it's said that this specific back injury can cause things, related to that pain, living in pain all the time, like brain fog. Police also found a notebook with handwritten pages expressing hostility towards the health insurance industry, which, matches his social media posts. So I think it's important to note his state of mind throughout all of this is showing that aggression towards the healthcare industry and behind the scenes that he could have been going through a lot personally.
Well, a couple of things about the injury. I heard that even after the surgery, he was still out there doing a lot of physical activities. He was going to the gym a lot, doing some physical activities. And I heard some of the comments made that it really didn't bother him, the injury at the time. And if the surgery didn't work, was it the health insurance industry or the doctor who did the surgery was because it didn't work?
Right.
And was he really insured by United Healthcare at the time? If not, why did he pick the CEO of United Healthcare?
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, he's got to have some connection. And, we always look for that connection.
What bothers me about the case, though, guys, and I'll tell you, how did he know the executive was coming out that door? How did he know the executive was in that hotel? And how did he know the movements, location, and everything about that specific person? Yeah, it's just to know the time he's coming out the door. Think about that.
Right, I don't want to be accusatory, but maybe a leak or something like that.
Yeah, this is very curious to me. Now, if they'd say he'd been standing out there for quite a long time, well, I find it hard to believe because they have doormen at the door and they have people coming in and out all the time. I think the police would have been called. So that's kind of curious to me, is how do you know the exact movements? Because a lot of these executives don't really project their movements on a regular basis. And to have that happen, to know exactly coming out, how about which door? You know which door.
Right.
Which time, where he's going. So that's just a curious part of the case to me that to me is still a little bit puzzling.
All right, do we want to talk a little bit about how Luigi was apprehended?
Yeah, that'd be great if we might do that.
So he was apprehended on December 9th after multiple days of a manhunt. And prosecutors have indicated that they're going to seek the maximum penalty. They're saying it was very calculated, and the impact on the victim's family is another big factor that is playing into this. The family and colleagues. I mean, this is a really big deal for somebody like this to be assassinated in this way. So the trial's set to begin in February. It could begin before this episode airs, but But legal experts are predicting it's going to be a pretty high profile case, and it's going to set a precedent for how workplace related crimes are prosecuted.
Well, let's back up. You talk about the investigation. Mind if we go back a little bit further
Sure.
here? How was he caught? And I'll tell you what I think that was very brilliant on the part of the New York City Police Department, all right? And I got to hand it to those investigators. I was very careful about releasing certain things to the public or the media. I was very careful. And I always thought about that in the cases I worked. What did the media do, or excuse me, what did the police department, they released video of him, right? I would be hesitant to do that. They released video. Did they not tell you what his movements? Where was he at before? Where was he standing? Remember? Standing in the hospital. They showed a picture of him at the hospital.
Yeah, it's actually said that in the photo with his mask down, the reason he pulled his mask down was because the girl working the counter and him were flirting. So that's why he ended up taking his mask down, which I find interesting.
And they released that photo, did they not?
Yeah,
the police released that for public identification. Go ahead, Ellen.
I think it's really interesting. A lot of people are saying that specific photo you're talking about, it doesn't fully resemble Luigi. They're saying that they could have possibly gotten the wrong guy.
Heard that.
Just based on the photo. Do you think that the similarities are there enough?
The similarities, they look similar. Remember, there's supporting information too. When he was arrested, did he not have a gun?
He had a lot of evidence.
A lot of evidence. So think about that, the totality of the evidence. Even if it wasn't exactly him, the similarity in the look was enough for somebody to recognize somebody who looked like that, right?
Right, but the smile is the one thing that throws me off in the photo. The smile does not look the same to me. And it could be definitely the angle, because the angle is down, but it looks a little off to me.
Didn't you see the picture? I think there's a picture of him in the cab, backseat of a cab. Did you see that one?
That one looks more similar to me, but the one at the hospital specifically does not.
Well, remember, it's a side angle. It's not, and it's not a mugshot. It's not a full face mugshot where you saw all the characteristics. And if you get a side angle view of somebody, how accurate is that?
Right. Yeah.
Was it close enough for the? How about this? The approximate age match, hair color, height and weight.
Yep.
Facial description, the similarities there. That's why you're not going to arrest and put somebody in jail purely based upon a video. Right?
Right.
You have supporting documentation. So the similarities enough are there to do their investigation. I'm just happy that the police department thought enough to release those images to the public. And the New York City Police Department had his movements tracked. Remember, he went to the Starbucks too, did he not?
Yeah.
What did he do at Starbucks? He bought water. He bought some other stuff there. They got that out of the trash can. They were able to retrieve stuff out of the trash can.
Which is always fascinating when they do it. I think it's really smart to pull that and pull the DNA and everything like that using a loophole in a sense.
Absolutely.
But the video evidence was so critical in releasing that, and along with their tracking of his movements throughout the entire New York City area at the time. They got him going to a cab. He was riding a bike away. The Starbucks, the youth hostel, and the hospital you stand in. All that just is amazing. I really commend the New York City Police Department for that.
So, as Ali mentioned, this is a pretty high-profile case. Do you think press will be allowed in the courtroom?
I don't know if that's been decided yet or not. Some cases do, some they don't. Should press be allowed in? Why not? I mean, do police officers wear body cameras? Why? They want to see their job, right? I think there should be cameras in every courtroom. I even think the Supreme Court does not want cameras. Federal courts don't allow cameras. Why not? Police officers and other entities have to have cameras on all the time. So why not in the legal system? They can see how it plays out. And I think the public getting a view of the legal system in progress, to me, is really critical to understand.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially a high-profile case like this.
So the trial was set to happen on January 18th.
It'll never happen that quick.
Yeah.
They ended up moving it to next month. Yeah.
It won't even happen. I see you're talking year.
What do you think it's going to be delayed again?
This kind of relates to the current events, but people thought it was really interesting that it got moved. It got moved because both parties needed more time to prepare for trial, but people started speculating that it was related to it not being able to be covered on TikTok once it was banned.
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I'll give you an example. I was a fairly deliberate, I don't want to say word slow, I was a fairly deliberate report writer. It would take me sometimes a month or two, a couple months to complete a whole report to get all the facts in the investigation. And not only write a report, but then you have to have the prosecutor prepare. Then you have discovery where the prosecutor gives evidence to the defense gives case formations. I think it's impossible to have this go to court in February based upon all the discovery. And plus you have to go through what's called motions to suppress. Let me explain that. Motions to suppress is where the defense will file a motion with the court to try to have certain evidence, admissions, statements excluded from the trial. And I don't even think there's been any motions filed. I don't think there's been any challenges on the evidence. To me, that's just a delay happening because of the slow process. I don't see it ever taking place in February or even the next few months.
Why do you think they were really trying to expedite this process?
If you want me to guess, it could have been a speedy trial filed by the defense because defense can file speedy trial provision. It could have been that, or they might want to have it go quick, just to have it go to court if they're all ready for trial. I can't say that's just awfully quick. And again, has all the evidence in the case been processed?
I highly doubt it by this time. I find it interesting that he was charged with terrorism. I think that's unusual, to say the least.
There's different terrorism statutes, and I'll explain. There's a national terrorism statute, all right, that covers terrorism, and terrorism, a little bit in depth about that. Terrorism is putting fear into the public, and usually there's three main parts of terrorism. Putting fear in the public for political, religious, or economic reasons, okay? Now, could this have been an economic reason based upon him there? That could be, okay, to scare the public. But again, then there's terrorism on state level. State can issue charges. And I did not see, at least at the time, and still don't, a terrorism-related federal charge unless they know something I don't. Because generally speaking, murder cases are a state charge or not a federal charge unless there's across state lines some type of politician. So to have it issued on a federal basis, there's more to the case. And I know they've released a lot. I think there's a lot of information they have not released yet to the public. So we just don't know right now all the aspects of this.
Yeah, and I think his lawyer's saying they have nothing. So I find that really interesting, too, that he's being charged with terrorism then. And I know we talked a little bit off camera about this, but I think it's fascinating that we don't charge school shooters with terrorism and that we're charging one person.
Well, remember we talked about the definition of terrorism. You know, is it political? Is it religious? Is it economic or like that? Or is it somebody with mental illness who's out to hurt people because they were bullied or something like that? Or there's other deep-seated things.
Right.
So again, the motive is part of it. What's the motive? The majority, I don't want to say all, the majority of the mass shootings that happen, let's say school shootings, are people with mental illness. That's it. Mental illness is such a big part. Now, could Luigi Mangione, is he alleged to commit this crime, have a mental illness? You know, I don't know. I haven't gotten into his psyche. But the incidents of mass shootings I've heard at schools, there's always, well, he was in treatment with this, he's been diagnosed with this, or the police were called previously. So, you know, who knows what's different about this case right now. We will eventually, though.
I want to dive into the public reaction and media glorification that's heavy in this case. The case has garnered significant media attention, with many outlets focusing on Mangione's background and his grievances with the healthcare industry. Social media platforms have amplified these narratives, with some users framing Mangione as a working class hero fighting against corporate greed. There's many hashtags out there like Justice for Luigi and healthcare corruption that have been trending and sparking debates about exposing systemic issues within healthcare and insurance specifically. And I think it kind of justifies this violence when they do that, or they're attempting to justify the violence. When that initial surveillance video came out and photo came out, like we were talking about at the hostel, a lot of people, specifically on social media, were, I don't see who you're talking about, no one's there, he's camouflaged, things like that, or calling him attractive, or, you know, again, like the hero, like we talked about. And I find that very interesting. As you talk to younger generations, you'll be seeing that versus, you know, I sat down and talked to my dad about this, and he's like, it's horrible, right? There's a generational difference in that too, and I find it very interesting. People on social media and in the news are speculating if he was set up, like we talked about earlier, or whether, because of all that evidence in his backpack, or if he's this mastermind because of the way his YouTube channel worked. There was a photo of him in McDonald's for his profile picture, and he got arrested at McDonald's. And so people are thinking he's this criminal mastermind because in his backpack there was Monopoly money.
Hey, sure. Now, the backpack was found at the park, at Central Park.
Yes.
But is that the one? But then he was arrested with the backpack in McDonald's, wasn't he?
Yes.
Was it a different backpack?
It was the one with him. At McDonald's, he had Monopoly money.
Okay, I thought that was one that the Monopoly money was in the one at found in the park.
No, it was found in the one that he had on him when he was...
Yeah, on his person,
Okay.
I believe. And it had Monopoly money in it, and I think
I'm going to verify that. I want to check that out a little bit. I want to do a little bit more.
Let's Google it.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's Google that.
Wait there. Let me talk a little bit about this real quick. Again, where was Monopoly money found? What grievance did Luigi Mangione have against the insurance industry?
I mean, a lot of people are speculating that it was because of his injury, but I'm not sure that really
Doesn't tie in.
No, not completely.
I've heard some about his mom having potential issues as well, health issues, and that he apparently was hearing her scream in chronic pain and things like that that could have led to his distress.
The family was wealthy. We all agree, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And did the family have United Healthcare insurance?
No.
No. And if the mom's in pain, again, is it the treatments being provided by the healthcare giver? Or was it the insurance company that caused the pain?
Right.
And if they're let's say they're millionaires, they have enough money to support even paying insurance premiums.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he was hired out?
I don't think he was hired out. That's just my own opinion. I think there's some deep-seated reason that this happened. Again, we're talking allegedly because he's only been charged.
Right.
He's not been convicted. So again, nobody could get. I wish somebody would tell me what motive did he have to target, number one, the insurance industry, number two, United Healthcare, and then this specific person.
Well, and that question exactly is what I mean. I personally believe that I think that this was a bigger collaborative effort. I don't think that this was a single man planning this out by himself. I don't think that he would have been capable of thinking something up like this.
Especially with as many details in it, right? To fact check that, Monopoly money was found in the backpack in Central Park.
Yeah, it was not found in the backpack. So yeah, I'm glad we clarified that.
It was in the backpack in Central Park. I thought it was on his person.
And I don't even think
yeah.
that backpack was really linked to him for sure.
It's just said, it's speculated that
Speculated.
it was.
So, but if he had another, I don't think he was not carrying two backpacks at the time. So I think that might have been a separate backpack completely.
But people speculate, I guess, that it was attached because he was found at McDonald's, and McDonald's has ties previously to Monopoly. You remember the game we played?
I think it's reaching too far. That's social media just grasping at things. I can find a tie to every case I work with something else. Okay? I think that's
true.
Not very factual.
He was also found, though, at a crossroads on the Monopoly map on the railroad. Still reaching?
Still reaching.
I have a question for both of you guys, both of your opinions. Do you think that social media and the public reaction, do you think it would have been the same if Luigi would not have been as conventionally attractive? Do you think if it was someone else and he did not look the way he looks, do you think that the reaction would have been different?
Let's look at it this way. What percent of the population have had trouble with insurance companies? Quite a few, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest one is health insurance. Because, again, I'm not saying that United Healthcare has done anything wrong, all right? But I'm just saying people can complain about premiums, losing coverage, not having coverage, or not having enough deductibles. You can find all sorts. And everybody has had some type of grievance with an insurance company. Maybe some justifiable, some not. And you can find that in all aspects. So I think part of the support Luigi's getting and being charged is I think people can relate to the insurance company's bad name based upon situations people have expressed.
I agree. And to go off of that, it was even said that, I'm not going to name names, but there was another insurance company that was going to put limits on anesthesia starting in specific states.
Yes.
And then after he got killed, they went back on that. So I think it's showing that the general public, like you said, is upset with insurance companies.
And the other part is good-looking guy, all right? Good-looking guy. And a lot of the people, I don't want to make gender, but probably mostly female because he's good-looking, but they weren't the victim. I guarantee if he would have sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, I'm not saying him, but anybody who would have assaulted, would they feel the same way about him if they did something to her about him being a good looker?
I don't think he's good looking.
I'm just telling you. Well, that's the word out there. Think about that.
Yeah,
because they were the victim.
But absolutely not. I mean, I look at this like, I mean, what if Brian Thompson was my father, my brother,
right?
Someone I know closely.
You would support him.
Yeah, it completely changes the perspective.
Right.
I mean, this is still a human life. And I think at the end of the day, that's what a lot of people they're not taking into account.
Right.
This was a human life taken.
And a lot of these people just looking for some type of something to say on social media. They follow the trend, right?
Yeah.
Not saying the trend for our podcast, but a lot of people out there, they're just following, hey, other people say it, so I'm going to say that.
Right.
It's like some of the riots that happened against the Jewish students. There are a lot of people out there that didn't even know what the river to the sea is. A lot of people out there have never been the victim or been any type of incident with Jewish people. They were just following a mass group of people out there. So that's part of it there, first of all, is number one, everybody's had trouble with insurance industry in some manner. of claims or something. And I think some of the people just living outside of reality. Oh, he's good looking or this or that. They're just not thinking. Again, if they're the victim or the parents or loved ones were a victim, I doubt they'd be thinking that way because they're insulated. Right. They're safe now. Whoever did is in jail. Right. Again, he's still innocent until proven guilty.
It's said too that a lot of people in jail with him are pretty supportive of him too. He has the taper fade.
He was given a haircut, and they really the prisoners themselves fixed him up before he was brought out.
They were also communicating. There was a news channel that was outside of the jail, and people were watching the news channel at the same time, and they were communicating with them. I think that stuff is just fascinating. He was really well taken care of and well cared for in jail.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it should be. I mean, prisoners should be taken care of in jail.
But the prisoners are taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's
really, it united a lot of people.
Can I bring up something really quick about this case versus another case, a recent case that happened? The person who shot President Trump in the ear, is he alive or dead? Dead, right?
Yeah.
So what can law enforcement not do? They can't talk to him, right? They can try doing his background. He had devices with encrypted data, some overseas stuff that they can't get into. So everybody agree? What is different between the person who shot President Trump versus Luigi Mangione?
Luigi's alive.
And what can they do to him?
Ask him questions, yeah.
And he can volunteer information, right?
Yeah.
So exculpatory tends to show innocent information. He has the ability to tell them what's going on, does he not?
Will he, though?
I'm saying he has the ability. He can go through his attorneys. He has the ability to say things to law enforcement through his attorneys, let's say. And if he wasn't completely involved, if other people involved, if that's the case, she'll share it.
Right.
Just like Oswald. Oswald was alive after he shot President Kennedy for a short period of time. He was interviewed, but then he was killed. And that's the conspiracy theory is that Jack Ruby shot Oswald to shut him up. So he couldn't talk to law enforcement. Same thing, okay, with this here.
How can law enforcement balance the need for public safety with the risk of sensationalizing high-profile crimes?
Public safety is number one. If we have to take care of ourselves, that's the main job of any political entity is the safety of the public, first of all. And if they recognize that there's risk, they need to stop it. I don't want to get political. I'll tell you this right now. Is it safer to have an open border, safer for the citizens to have a closed border? I think the same way here. Is it safer to have people, if you can recognize problems, to try to be proactive versus reactive? And in my college classes, there's two types of policing, warrior policing and guardian policing. There's proactive versus reactive. I'm a proactive law enforcement officer. I want to stop things before they happen versus have something happen first and let's fix it afterwards. Because every time there's a crime, there's usually a victim. And I don't like seeing the victims out there crimes.
Back to using social media, do you think that things involving social media hold up well in court?
Let me ask you both a question. What percent, for both of you, I want a percentage, what percent of social media are factual versus non-factual?
I think it depends where you get your information.
No, it's totality. Totality. In all the social media platforms.
It depends on I think it depends on the platform. I think, and it depends on who you're following. There's a lot of variations to it because if you're going straight to a YouTuber that is a news reporter and is getting their news from factual sources and are citing their sources and you can validate the sources yourself, you might be getting real and valid information. But if you're going and you're reading someone's Reddit post and they did this, that's not valid versus.
Yeah, I think it depends entirely on how you're using the social media. I mean, it depends on the person using it. I mean, some people are looking in the wrong places on the wrong platforms, and some people aren't. I mean, some people are able to use this responsibly, able to find factual evidence. I mean, I don't want to say, social media you can't find news on there that's credible at all because that's just not true. I mean, there are some factual things. Is it harder to find factual things on social media? Is there a lot of misinformation out there? Yeah,
for sure.
I'm going to put you guys to answer the question. What? Okay, is 100% factual?
No, 100% is not factual.
90?
No.
80?
Maybe. It depends where you're looking. I would say
number
between 0 and 80%, but I don't think I can give you an exact number either.
Well, let me bring up a recent case. I don't know if you haven't found, there's a case against CNN. CNN did a report on a former Navy veteran who was trying to have people escape out of Afghanistan, and that was, quote, kind of the mainstream media, CNN, right? Facts reporting. They were sued by this person for providing information that was detrimental to this guy that he filed a suit saying it was lies. CNN just lost a lawsuit because it indicated they were fabricating a story about him. And that's a kind of a mainstream. So what percent?
Yeah, that's not social media, though.
No, but they're supposed to be a higher grade of social media, aren't they?
I mean, I would say that generally news outlets hold themselves at a higher standard.
They're supposed to hold themselves.
Yes.
That's what I mean, just supposed to. And my fear of social media is some of these people look and search, and they see some social media platforms. Well, if I'm reading it, it's got to be true. And that's my fear about social media. Are people being taken in?
Yeah, I think people should definitely take what they see on social media with a grain of salt and do your own research. I always push that. Do your own research and look at the facts, because that's what matters.
How many young people do that? How many people look at the
If
posts?
they're smart, they do it.
But how many? Social media has played a big part in this, especially the support for Luigi, right? All right, we'll move on. Next topic there.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the investigation. So the investigation, they faced several challenges, specifically locating Mangione after he fled the scene. Police relied a lot on witness statements and surveillance footage, like we were talking about earlier. And investigators had to navigate his extensive online activity, and they were trying to use this to possibly locate him. Specifically, Reddit was used. His posts on Reddit were used to try to track his movements, and that was I think a help in locating him, along with, of course, those witness statements that we talked about earlier. Police stated that they found the jacket that he was wearing in Central Park, and they said that Luigi was found in the exact same clothes as he committed the crime. I mean, we talked a little bit about that earlier, but how's that possible for something like that?
Inconsistencies for sure.
Yeah.
By the police?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if he is wearing the same clothes? Yeah, I don't know enough about the case, and I wish I did. I know quite a bit from what I've been tracking. I've been tracking through official news conferences versus what's on social media. I don't want to say inconsistencies. Are there things that are still questions about what happened there? I guarantee you one thing. Police and law enforcement have not released everything about the case. There's more that we just don't know. And second, I think they got a big lead. I think it was San Francisco regarding identification of Mangione. I think that was a big lead.
San Francisco was the original department that took the missing person's information from his mother.
And I think they were instrumental there. So again, I know that happened. Again, I don't know all the intricacies. And one other thing is, how was he found at McDonald's?
Someone called it in.
Somebody identified him.
Yeah, someone identified it from the photo and called it in.
Was there really more to it, though?
There's a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say. There's a lot of I don't want to say conspiracy, because I mean
It
is though.
It is conspiracy. I mean, it's the whole situation. There's a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot that it can't be estimated. It's a lot that we can't just assume.
And I just don't like guessing. I'll look at the facts. I'll make some supposition. I'll make some estimated opinions. Let's say opinions versus guessing. All right. And some of the things out there, again, they're guessing, and people just take, be a little bit more kind of cautious about the things that they're hearing regarding the social media stuff. But again, personally, I think there's more to it how he was found at McDonald's besides just somebody recognizing him. That's just my own thought there, first of all. There was a lot of evidence on him, and think about this. If the evidence was planted, how did he know he's being picked up by police that day? I mean, he didn't know. He obviously didn't know the police were going to pick him up. Because when they asked him, were you just in New York, he got very nervous, and they could see the change in his whole behavior. He'd had to know when he's being picked up, where he's being picked up, to have all this part of a conspiracy. I think it was good police work. That's my own opinion. And you got to commend the law enforcement officers in Pennsylvania as well as New York City. They did a great job. But again, unless we know the facts, we do know a lot of facts about this, do we not?
Right.
We know a lot of facts. And there's some things that we can kind of put our own hypotheticals on, which is fine, too. It's just hard to say, but we're coming at it not skeptical, but as an open mind about, is there more to this? Agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. His personal life, his family life. Grew up in a fairly wealthy household, agree? Yeah. Went to 2 Ivy League schools. Smart.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. He, I think, gave the speech at his high school graduation. Did he have a master's degree in computer science? Yeah, I think his education was in some type of computer or sciences like that. Yeah. Went to the University of Pennsylvania. That's a pretty good school. That's a great school. Elite. Goes off to Hawaii. I think something happened with his personal life that made him escape from his family and go off personally. And that's, I think, the missing part is what went on between the time he flourished as a young person and what changed in his life.
Right, and maybe it was, have people looked into who he was with in Hawaii, and do we know if there was anything that connected those friends that he spent a lot of time with to the healthcare industry? Were one of them affected? There's a lot of unanswered questions because this is still an ongoing case that we haven't, it's not fully closed. So
That's what I want to get into regarding motive. I don't think something creeped up when he was at college about the healthcare industry. I don't think something creeped up all of a sudden.
right.
I think something was put into his head. Now, could it have been at college through students, administrators, faculty, or could it have been something when the people he met in Hawaii? When did his behavior change and why?
Right.
And did somebody put something into his head to have him on a target if he's the one who did this? Because he still allegedly did this. And that's the missing part that I'd like to know is more of a motive. And that's a missing part. And again, his family life, his grandfather was wealthy, the parents were wealthy, and that's just a missing component.
Yeah, and hopefully, media will continue to report back on this, and hopefully they'll allow media in the courtroom to be able to let us know exactly from people that know him and witnesses.
And I would just like factual information.
Yeah.
Let's get some factual information out there about what's going on.
Going back to motive a little bit, so the engravings found on the bullets, the words deny, defend, and depose,
Yep.
were words found engraved on the bullets found at the scene of the murder. And interestingly enough, that's a phrase that's often used to describe insurance, not necessarily healthcare specifically, but just the insurance industry in general.
I think that's the title of a book too, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was a title of a book. And you're right, that was engraved on a bullet. So there's some type of message there. There is. And that's a huge clue as far as I'm concerned about, the engravings on the bullets.
Right. Yeah. He also tried to shout something as he was being moved.
Yeah, he was talking to the public. He was trying
Yes,
to.
I think that's interesting too. He's trying to capture that public attention.
Yeah. Well, he's looking for public sympathy. That's all it is about him being charged for the crime.
Mm.
Can I branch off in a different area here? Let's talk about the victim. The victim was an executive with United Healthcare. We know that he was a high-profile individual within the company. We knew he was a family man with a couple of kids. And we knew that he had a solid career, from what I understand. Let's talk about the executive portion of a company. And it's a personnel issue. Executive protection to protect these people who are high profile is very important. More and more companies are going to executive protection, okay, because they're trying to protect. And I think we talked about this off camera about why is it so important. And again, you have a life, you have a person, you have a father, you have a husband, and you have family members. All that ties in. But the one thing about keeping the executives safe who are high up in companies is for the shareholders. If an executive is running a company, let's say the CEO, a big part of the profitability of the company and operation of the company is based upon the knowledge and the skills of the CEO. What if that CEO is no longer capable of running the company? How much will that impact the company itself? And so that's why executive protection is a very important part. Physical law enforcement training does provide an executive protection training program. We do that with different individuals who've been trained in executive protection, and those of us that have done it on different scales. I did a protection for a lot of Hollywood stars that came in, and also I had to be trained to be able to help when the president was in town or dignitaries. So I went through that training. Some of our other people did more protection for corporate executives. Another employee we have did protection for the Olympics and supplemented the Secret Service. He was a federal agent. And so there's different levels. And I think that people who are in executive positions, you're going to be given up privacy, right? You guys see that? You'd be giving up a lot of privacy in your life for running a company to have somebody around you all the time protecting you. And that's kind of a pitfall of being in those high positions. But the executives need to understand that they're trying to protect you as a person, but also trying to protect your company as a whole, too. And you can't lose that and protect yourselves. There's some executives and companies that don't want executive protection. They don't want anybody around them. They want to be by themselves. And they're not taking risks. They're just trying to live their lives every day. But if you're not taking it serious enough to protect yourself, you're protecting the interest of your company as well as yourself and your family. Doesn't that make sense to you guys about?
Yeah.
So what can be done for that? First, if you're in a high-profile position, you need to understand what comes with the position. First of all is your personal space is going to be violated almost every day. Going off jogging by yourself in a park or going off taking for a long walk by yourself is pretty much going to be non-existent.
Or it's not smart.
Yeah, and so that's a part of it too. So I had heard that he had executive protection detail. They just weren't there. Or I heard that they were there, but they were somebody. Have you guys heard anything about that? A little bit more about it? The security detail?
I know he had one, but I also heard that they were not present at the hotel, and I want to know why.
Yeah, that's curious. You're getting what I'm talking about here. He's a high profile. Did he have security? And if he did, where were they?
Right,
And
you'd think they'd be in an adjoining room here if anything happens, and be walking with him. I mean, you
Walking out
talk
with him.
about high-profile people, like look at Taylor Swift, for example. She always has people on her, no matter where she is. Walking into the Chiefs game, she has people. So why is he walking out of a hotel alone?
well, we do training for executive protection. We have videos of politicians and stars and singers with their EP detail, executive protection detail, and it shows how they have tried to be attacked. It shows different things that happen, and we have that in mind. Somebody should have went out first of all ahead of him, security detail, take a look around, do an assessment, and before he even walked out. And why were they not there? Did he have one? And what's changed? And I'll tell you what's changed. Recently, we've got a lot of inquiries through VISTA law enforcement training about putting an executive protection component in a lot of our training classes for executives and for corporate security. So we got several classes coming up. We're going to be training some people in more executive protection and defensive tactics and use of less lethal and lethal weapons, defending and protecting their corporate administrators.
I recommend the class.
Yeah, that's right. You guys.
Yeah, okay.
So,
I do have one more thing that I think is really important that we discuss when we're talking about this case is the possibility of jury nullification. I mean, widespread support of Luigi. Do you think that's a possibility?
well, sure. But that's why they go through the jury selection process. Voir dire, they go through a selection process of preemptory strikes for cause. That's how they can dismiss jurors by the defensive prosecutor. And the truthful aspect of the jury provide truthful answers to the judge and the legal teams during jury selection. Can some people lie? Yeah, it can happen. And getting a friendly jury in certain jurisdictions is kind of hard sometimes. And it's friendly to who? The defendant or friendly to the prosecution? There's always issues with that. They try to do what they can to get a neutral jury the best they can.
I heard in pretty high-profile cases, specifically in the Casey Anthony case, I heard that they had people that were potential jurors in hotels without access to media.
Yeah, that's called sequestering a jury, where the jurors will be put up in hotel rooms where if they get newspaper articles or TV, they cannot turn to any stations, or the TVs are off and they only have newspaper articles that with the main case facts cut out, and they can only have so much media. And so it's a very hard process to be sequestered, especially if you're talking a long trial. That's going to be a lot of publicity. They're going to be sequestered. Second of all, there's two ways to do this. You can have what's called a change of venue, which means that if there's a lot of pretrial publicity in a certain area, they can change the location of trial to more of an independent area, first of all. Or, on the other hand, they can bring a jury in from outside the area and from another part of the state to hear the trial. So they can either change the trial itself to another jurisdiction or bring in a jury.
What do you think they'll do, being that this case is widespread against all of the U.S.?
I think all of the U.S., I think there will be a change of venue tried, but where are they going to take it? It has to stay in New York. They might try to go to upstate New York. So I think it'll be applied for. It may be granted, but since the widespread publicity, I just don't know about the success of that. It'll be an interesting case when it comes up.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe send you guys on a road trip to attend a trial. So for media, a lot unknown still. I'll agree.
Yeah.
We agree there is influence by social media. We'll leave it at that, not to throw any more controversy. Yeah. And we do agree that we'd rather have more facts than anything, but we agree we can throw our opinions into, right, about this case here. But we're not getting into too much of the nuts and bolts about what actually happened with where he was shot at and all this other evidence. We're talking about the case itself, about what has went on within the case, the publicity, the social media aspect, the people supporting him. And remember, there's a victim there. We have a victim. And one thing I found out, you had somebody named Ted Bundy who murdered a lot of people, right?
Yep.
Can somebody name me 3 of Ted Bundy victims' names?
I don't think I could.
I can't.
Can you name one?
I know that there's a survivor, but I don't know her name.
Why is it they always remember the suspects' names but not the victims?
I think people get obsessed with them, if I'm being quite honest.
Yes.
Because of the just, I don't know, the publicity. They really glorify these people. And it's the same thing with school shooters.
Yeah.
And that's really something that I think really needs to stop.
Yeah, the public needs to work on that.
Putting so much their picture everywhere. I mean, people just obsess over these stories and these people, and I think that we should be considerate of the fact that there was a victim in this case. This person took a life. Ted Bundy took lives, and the fact that women were obsessed with him.
Yep.
It's almost concerning.
And you even look at, like, the Jeffrey Dahmer case, right? People are so upset with Netflix for creating that documentary, because it really did a disservice to the victims, and I think that's important to keep in mind.
The victims are lost in this, and that's the thing when I teach my college classes about what about remembering the victims,
Right.
versus remembering the suspect. There's one victim's name out there that has been hanging out there and that's Laken Riley. You guys heard of Laken Riley? And I think her name is more known than the suspect. All right? You guys name the suspect's name? I wish we would do that. I wish we could remember the victim's name more of the victim of these crimes versus the suspects. In my case, I worked as a homicide detective. I remember both. All right, I remember both. And so, public out there, let's not forget about the victims of these crimes. Let's not forget about the people who suffer. And you also have secondary victims. A secondary victim is not only was Laken Riley murdered, and not only are people killed, such as the executive, right?
Right.
What about their family? Those are secondary victims about these, and they are survivors where their husband, their dad is dead, but then we have them surviving and have to go through the grief every day.
They're affected too.
I just love to see more people remember the victims' names. I at least remember some victims' names in this. Again, these are touching stories. Hey, I'm so glad to have you two with me. All right. Again, we don't have to have all these law enforcement professionals. You two with your research, asking relevant questions, and kind of having a discussion here. I just want to talk about the issues that have come up in the case.
For sure, this is very current events.
I was able to hopefully clarify some details, and you guys are great. So here we had Sarah Streifler, executive producer, and then we have Allie Vode, who is the producer of the Trend Podcast. And thank you all for listening. Remember, we'll be in touch. Our next episode, remember, we do have other episodes that are always going to be coming up. And if you check our website, you'll see the upcoming episode. Our website is www.trendmediallc.com. And for Sarah, Allie, my name is Gary Fortney, and this is The Trend. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into this episode of The Trend. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us at The Trend's website at www.trendmediallc.com, or you can email us at any time at thetrend@trendmediallc.com. We welcome everybody's comments, suggestions, or reviews. Don't forget to stay connected with us on social media. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Trend Media Podcast, and join the conversation on Facebook by searching The Trend Podcast. Check out our Amazon page through the link on our website, where you'll find some of our recommended products. If you've enjoyed this episode, consider supporting us by donating $5 to our Venmo account at The Trend Podcast. Every little bit helps. Thank you so much for donating. If you're interested in doing so, we really appreciate it. We'll be back next time with more true crime stories, sites on law enforcement trends, and current trends with our region and the people we serve. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay part of The Trend.